恭敬大德圣听，为此法会集结众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生多思离苦得乐，殊真无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attempt bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disaster, slanting life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, Amitabha, welcome back to lecture class number 139 as we explore the Dharma. Okay, before I go any further, I see someone I've never seen before on Zoom. I just want to check, is that you, Abel? Because the name is in Chinese. The reason?
Yes, I'm able.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking is because Abel emailed me out of the blue. He got my email from Madalena, and he flew from Jiangsu, which is near Shanghai, to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and stayed one night just to see how it was like. And the only purpose of his visit was to come and visit Ten Pian, our monastery, a branch monastery in Kuala Lumpur. So Abel said he will try to join the class. So that's why I'm saying. So anyway, today, let's do a recap for what we have done. Last week, we looked at loving kindness and the techniques for dealing with resentment, because when we practice loving kindness and you start getting good at it, and you really want to get into the dhyanas or the absorptions, eventually, as you expand your practice of loving kindness, you will come across people that you don't like. And that's not good, because it stops your ability to enter the dhyanas. So dealing with resentment is actually really important. So last week we covered the various ways. Number one is strengthening one's practice. Number two is not accepting insults. And then number three is finding a positive quality in that person. And then today, we'll try to go my plan, at least my plan in the beginning was to go through the other points. But the question Ron asked from last week, and my mother had a follow-up question as well. And I have quite a lot of material on that, which I think is really important. So what I'll do is, I think this week, and it's all related to loving kindness as well. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to go sideways a bit. We are still connected to loving kindness, but we are going to get to address Ron's question from last week. All right. Actually, we already did address, but I want to provide the sutra that I mentioned from last week. So, okay, you might want not to look at your screen, because you'll see some flashing as I get through the slides that I prepared to today's slide. Okay, so this was Ron's question from last week. This is a repentance verse from our DRBA recitation handbook on page 197. It says, offenses arise from the mind. Repentance is by the mind. If the mind is extinguished, offenses are forgotten. The mind forgotten, offenses wiped out, both are empty. This is called true repentance and reform. And Ron, your question, if I was not mistaken, is, does that mean what is true repentance and reform? And when I said that you have to be a sage to get to that level, then your second question was then kind of like, do you remember your question, Ron? Second?
Not really, but I think
Okay.
the thing was that I was asking because I didn't know how do you extinguish, how do you get rid of offenses from the mind? How is the mind extinguished,
Okay. So that's the same.
That was the point of my question.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. So that's the same question my mom has, if the mind is extinguished. And I think now I remember the second part of your question was then, like, what's the point if you have to wait until you are a sage? Then I said, no. I shared a sutra called the Salt Crystal Sutra. I mentioned that sutra, and I said that as we practice, we can change how our past karma affects us. So today we'll go a bit into that. All right. So let me start by explaining first that karma is fixed. All right. The results of karma, when we plant a seed of karma, the result cannot change. So it's kind of like gardening. If you plant a papaya seed, you will get a papaya tree if the conditions are right for the seed to grow. You will never get a chili tree or a mango tree from that papaya seed. It's impossible. Karma works the same way. But that's just half the story, okay? Without knowing the other half, we may fall into a misconception that if we create karma in the past, that when the karma comes back, that we are bound to experience the karma as it was created. What does that mean? Okay, if you have some patience, we'll go along with a few slides and then we'll come to that. Okay, but first, just let us see what, for example, Shufu here, from herein lies a treasure trove. I'll go a bit quick today. All right. I hope you all don't mind. If you have any questions, just stop me. So Shufu says there isn't a peaceful place in this world. I thought this was very appropriate. This was spoken in, I think, 1980 something, but I thought this was appropriate given the state of the world that we are in. Shufu says in every corner of the world, there's some kind of problem, some trouble or other. There isn't a single person who is peaceful every day. If this isn't this kind of affliction, is that kind. There's not a single person who's really happy in this world. Things have reached such a critical state that even kings and presidents shed tears and their hearts are filled with grief. What's the reason for this? In the past, we didn't know how to cultivate. We made many mistakes in cause and effect. We committed a lot of offenses and amassed bad karma or unwholesome karma. Because of this karma, we have to undergo all kinds of retributions. Then Shufu says, light offenses bring a light retribution, heavy offenses, the retribution is severe. And then this important part, this process of planting a cause and reaping a result is not off by a hair's breadth. Okay, but then there's a problem because a lot of the karma that we planted is from our past lives and we don't remember. So Shufu says, but in terms of what our ordinary eyes can see, without the penetration of past lives, we feel things are wrong. Actually, we get just what we deserve. Similar causes bring similar results. In the past, we didn't cultivate, so now we undergo painful retributions for our mistakes. All right. Remember this part, okay? The part about we feel things are wrong. When things happen to us, we feel things are wrong. Okay. Ron, do you want to say something?
No, I'll just.
Oh, what happened to Ron? Okay, anyway. Then it says, now that we understand this principle, which we are going to learn about, we should resolve to start anew and not make any more mistakes in cause and effect. We should be determined not to be muddled and casually create bad or unwholesome karma. If we go on amassing bad karma, then in the future it's hard to say what our retribution will be. Therefore, be cautious as if you were approaching a deep abyss or treading on thin ice. We should start afresh and change our lives in order to shape our future. Meanwhile, we must bear the suffering due to us, be patient with toil, and truly cultivate in accord with the Dharma spoken by the Buddha. Okay, let me see. Okay, we can skip this. All right. And then this is, let me see, where is this? Okay, the first paragraph is Shufu's commentary on the 100 Dharmas Shastra. It's a Yogacara text. Shufu says the cause is the beginning of the cycle and the effect is the end outcome. This is what cycle? The cycle of cause and effect. Between the cause and the effect, there is the monk of karma, which interacts with both the cause and effect. Okay, if that sounds a bit confusing, just what we're talking about, we're just talking about karma, okay, cause and effect. The interaction which occurs is decisive, just like a shadow that follows a shape. It is never inexact by the least bit, meaning the cause and the effect does not deviate. Okay, you plant papaya seed, you get papaya tree. And then in Words of Wisdom, Shufu says, the law of cause and effect is not off by a hair's breadth. When studying Buddhism, you must believe in the law of cause and effect and never make any mistakes in karma. By no means deny the law of cause and effect because it is a timeless and unchanging law. There's also another place, another Dharma talk, which I cannot find at the moment. Shufu talks about don't worry about your past. All right. Shufu says just worry if you are cultivating or not. Okay, you should worry if you're not cultivating, but as long as you cultivate, you don't have to worry. Okay, all right. And why? Okay, because we'll get to the answer when we look at the Salt Crystal Sutta. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to go a bit quick today. Then there's another sutra. It's called the Bija Sutta. Okay, it's called the seed in Malay language, which is based off the Indic languages. Seed is called Biji, B-I-J-I, so it's very similar. So here the Buddha says, suppose a bitter seed of neem, angle god, or bitter god. These three plants are known to have a very bitter taste. It says was planted in moist earth. I'm sorry, I'm having a bit problem in my throat. Whatever nutrients it takes up from the earth and water will lead to its bitter, acerbic, and unpleasant taste. Why is that? Because the seed is bad, or rather the seed has bitter characteristics. So what is it talking about? The moist earth, the nutrients, and the water is referring to the conditions that karma, a karmic seed requires for it to ripen, for it to arise. Because karma is a conditioned phenomena. All right? Karma cannot happen out of the blue. It needs the right combinations of conditions so that the karmic seed can arise. Okay, so karma itself is a conditioned phenomena. All right, which means, okay, if you know that, then if you know how to adjust your conditions, you can actually adjust what karma arises, more or less. All right, some conditions you cannot adjust, but sometimes you can. All right. So coming back to the sutra, the Buddha says, in the same way, consider a person who has wrong view, wrong thought, wrong speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, etc. Whatever bodily, verbal, or mental deeds they undertake in line with their view, their intentions, aims, wishes, and choices, that's how they make karma, all lead to what is unlikable, undesirable, disagreeable, harmful, and suffering. Why is that? Because their view is bad. Because you start off bad, you plant a bad seed, that's what you're going to get, right? Okay. Then the Buddha says, suppose a seed of sugar cane, fine rice, or grape. What are these? This represents things that you like. Sweet things. Fine rice is very nice to eat compared to, I guess, coarse rice. So again, the conditions are right. There's moist earth, there's nutrients. And what will happen? Buddha says it will lead to a sweet, pleasant, and delicious taste. That's when the seed grows into a tree, and then you get the fruit or the seed, the grain. Why is that? Well, because the intention is right. Buddha says the person has right view, has right thought, has right speech, action, livelihood, and then whatever their actions of the body, their speech, and their thoughts they have is in line with that view, with that wholesome view, with a sweet view. All right. So their intention is good. They have right intention. So of course, when you plant those kind of seeds, and they fruit, when it comes to fruition and they ripen, your result is good. All right. Okay. So now we've talked about karma is fixed, but like I said, fixed karma is only half the story. All right, you do this is bound to happen if the conditions become right. What is the other half of the story? Well, this is a sutta that I mentioned last week, but I didn't share because I didn't. So today I thought I would share. Okay, so the Buddha starts. This sutra is called the Lonapala Sutta. It's called a lump of salt. All right, I'm not sure if you all remember from last week. The Buddha says, monks, for anyone who says in whatever way a person makes karma, that is how it is experienced. The Buddha says, if someone says that, and if it's true, then there is no living of the holy life. In other words, there's no such thing as practice. Our cultivation will be ineffective because the Buddha says there is no opportunity for the right ending of stress. We won't be able to end our suffering. And the Buddha says, but for anyone who says when a person makes karma to be felt in such and such a way, that is how its result is experienced. There is the living of the holy life, or rather, then you can interpret that to mean there is a reason for the practice or the cultivation. There is the opportunity for the right ending of stress. So what does this mean? Okay, we talked about karma is fixed, right? But the effects of karma on the person is not fixed. So the first sentence says that if you create a certain kind of karma, you have to experience it in this way. The way the karma is going to affect you and make you feel is 100% confirmed. The Buddha says, no, that's not how karma works. The reason why the practice works, that we can end suffering is the karma. If the conditions are right, the karma will happen to you, but how you react to the karma is not fixed. All right, so the Buddha gives an example. Buddha says, take the case of a person who does a trivial bad deed, small bad deed, but it lands them in hell. It doesn't mean literally hell, it just means that their experience of it feels really terrible. Meanwhile, another person does the same trivial bad deed, but experience it in the present life without even a bit left over, let alone a lot. That means he just experienced it and there's no more reverberations of the karma. That karma does not lead to new unwholesome karma being created. All right. And the Buddha says, what kind of person does a trivial bad deed but it lands them in hell? A person who has not developed their contemplation of the body, of virtue, mind, of wisdom. So they don't practice at all. They don't cultivate. They are small-minded and mean-spirited, meaning like selfish, always taking advantage of people, and living in suffering. That kind of person does a trivial bad deed, but it lands them in hell. All right. So if you observe people, all right, you go out, you observe people, you find that sometimes the same thing happens to a group of people, but within a group of people, they all react differently. Although they all experience the same thing. Say you take a group of people and they're caught in a thunderstorm. All right, they're caught in a thunderstorm and most of them are miserable because no one likes to get wet. Right? They're totally miserable. They get wet, they get cold. Some people are afraid of being struck by lightning. So they want to shelter from the rain, but at the same time, they are afraid that if they shelter under a tree or something, then the tree will attract lightning, or under umbrella in an open field, their mind starts making up all these scenarios to get themselves safe. And then you get this special person, all right, you get a very special person in that group who comes from the desert and has never experienced rain before. If I'm not mistaken, I heard that there are tours for people who come from countries where there's very little rain for them to experience rain. I'm not sure. I think I've read this before. Anyway, you get this very special person. In their whole life, maybe they experience rain like once or twice. I used to be like that. Growing up in Malaysia, I remember going to Australia for my studies, and the sky in Australia during certain seasons, let me see, I think that was maybe the summer season, there's no clouds in the sky, just like California, where CDTB is. During certain seasons, you look up in the sky and the whole entire sky is just blue. There's not a single cloud. If you are in Malaysia, that's very, very hard to experience. Yeah, it was so special to me that I tried taking a photo of the blue sky to send to my parents, but I realized that, this photo doesn't have any context because it's just a blue. I realized how stupid it was. But at that time, to me, it was very special. Okay, so you have thunderstorm. Everyone's upset because they're wet, except this person who hardly experienced rain, and for that person, it makes them so happy. Right? Okay, so this is what we are talking about. All right, different people reacting when things happen to them. All right, so we have things happen to a bad person. All right, and then we have things now happen to a good person. We say, what kind of person does the same trivial bad deed but experience it in the present life without even a bit left over, let alone a lot? A person who has developed, I think there's a typo, who has developed their contemplation of the body, virtue, mind, and wisdom. They are not small-minded. That means in their minds, they have respect and reverence for people they meet, but are big-hearted, living without limits. Living without limits means like you don't, things like selfishness doesn't get in the way of you trying to help people. In this case, living without limits also mean the 4 Brahma Viharas. Okay, then we go on. That kind of person does the same trouble bad deed by experiencing it in the present life without even a bit left over, not to speak of a lot. So normally easygoing people are kind of like that. You know, they say like, there's a saying, water off a duck's back. If you have played with ducks before, you observe ducks when they swim in the pond, they dive into the water, they come up, and the water just beats off their feathers. So water off a duck's back. So the Buddha now uses the metaphor. He says, suppose a person was to drop a lump of salt into a small bowl of water. What do you think, mendicants? Would that small bowl of water become salty and undrinkable? The answer is yes, because there's only a little water in the bowl. And the Buddha says, take the same lump of salt and you drop it into the Ganges River. What do you think? Would the Ganges River become salty and undrinkable? And the answer is no. Why? Because the Ganges River is such a vast mass of water. It's so big, you wouldn't even know that the salt was put in, totally unaffected. And the Buddha says that's how it is. Okay, and Buddha gives another example. Buddha says, okay, take the case of a person who is thrown in jail for stealing $50, $1, or $100. While another person isn't thrown in jail for stealing $50, $1, or $100. Why? Buddha says, what kind of person is thrown in jail for stealing $50? A person who is poor, with few possessions and little wealth. That kind of person is thrown in jail for stealing $50, $1, or $100. Okay, now when the Buddha says that person is poor, using this example, okay, it does not mean literally that the person has no money. It just means the person is poor in his practice. The person is poor in his virtue. The person is poor in his patience, in his loving kindness, in his respect and reverence for people. That's what poor means. Okay, but in the case of this example, poor means maybe he can't afford a lawyer, or because he has no virtue, he has a history of stealing, you know, or people just don't care about him. You know, there are some countries where if you are in prison and you're poor, they look down on you and they don't give you your due process of justice. It could be like that. Then the Buddha says, what kind of person isn't thrown into jail for the same act? Well, a person who is rich, affluent, and wealthy, someone who has power. If you look at the world around, rich, powerful people seem to get away with a lot of things, you know. And the Buddha says that kind of person isn't thrown in jail for stealing $50, etc. All right. So here, wealth and power just means your how big your water is in terms of practice, not in terms of actual wealth. All right. Buddha gives another example in case, you know, people don't understand. Buddha says it's like a sheep dealer or butcher. Why sheep dealer or butcher? Well, I think it represents a business person, but someone just normal, a normal businessman. It could be a sundry shop keeper, for example, or laundry. Not to look down on any kind of those people, but it's just to signify a normal business person, not a powerful one. All right. So someone who steals from them, the Buddha says, they can execute, jail, fine, or otherwise punish one person who steals from them, but not another. What does that mean? Okay. Buddha says, what kind of person can they punish? A person who is poor with few possessions and little wealth. That's the kind of person they can punish. So if someone steals from them and that person is a very poor person, has no influential friends, you know, no friends who are authorities or powerful people, then the sheep dealer can punish them. But who they cannot punish? Okay, it says a ruler or their minister who is rich, affluent, and wealthy. That's the kind of person they cannot punish. In fact, all they can do is raise their joint palms and ask, please, good sir, give me my sheep or pay me for it. So if someone powerful were to steal their property, they can't do anything at all. You know, what I say is the best they can do is put their palms together, meaning it's like almost begging, and say, you know, please, you know, can you pay me for or give me back, you know, Please don't steal from me. Right? Okay. So now we come back to the Buddha saying, mendicants, meaning the bhikkhus, suppose you say, no matter how this person performs a deed, they experience it the same way. This being so, the spiritual life could not be lived, and there would be no chance of making a complete end of suffering. But suppose you say, no matter how this person performs a deed, they experience the result as it should be experienced. Then the Buddha says, then the spiritual life can be lived, and there's a chance of making a complete end of suffering. All right, so this was a sutta that I referenced last week. So as we practice and our patience increases, our loving kindness increases, our virtue increases, the way we see people becomes one based on respect and reverence. Like the Bodhisattva, people who walk the Bodhisattva path, you see all old men as either your grandfather or your father. You see all women as either your sister, your mother, or your grandmother, or your younger sister, or your cousin. If you can see all people like that as being your relative, and you treat them accordingly, then it is very difficult for them to make you upset, right? So someone who does not have loving kindness can get irritated very easily, because this person can easily hold on to anger or hatred or malicious thoughts for others. As long as he sees someone doing something that he doesn't approve, he will get upset. So he's not in control of himself. At the same time, if you have the same person who always takes advantage of people, he always tries to cheat people or use people for his benefit, someone like that is always suspicious of everyone else because he has those kind of thoughts in his head. For someone who's never ever thought of cheating people, or ever thought of stealing people's things, when they meet people, that's not how they see people, because these thoughts don't occur to them because they are not in that. Their mind doesn't roam in those realms. But for someone who does, someone who doesn't have loving kindness, someone who takes advantage of people, someone who's selfish, someone who tries to cheat people all the time, even if someone is nice to them, they view it suspiciously. So a person like this will never have a nice, peaceful, and calm mind. Their water is very small. Anything happens to them, and instantly their water becomes salty. But if you have a solid foundation of loving kindness, or you develop a foundation of loving kindness, then no matter what people do, because you treat them like your favorite grandmother or grandfather, think of someone that has that invokes those feelings in you, someone who you love unconditionally, cannot do any wrong. Even if they do wrong, it doesn't make you upset. For some people that could be Shufu or the Buddha or someone else. Then people like that cannot make you upset, even if they scold you. Yeah. So the principle of the Salt Crystal Sutta, or the principle of why the Buddha taught us about cause and effect and about karma, is we cannot change karma. Karma is fixed, the karma that we have planted before. But as long as we practice, as long as we develop ourselves, as long as we keep on growing our body of water, then the way the karma affects us is not fixed. The larger our body of water, the less the effect the karma will have on us, the less the salt that is put into the water will affect us. All right? Okay, so that's the first principle. All right? But there are more principles. Two more principles, in fact, that is inferred in the sutra, but it is not mentioned. Okay, what are the two principles? The first one is that we are not creating new unwholesome karma. And the second one is that we are not corrupted by wholesome karma. What does that mean? All right. Not creating new unwholesome karma is what? Okay, you take someone that I mentioned before who is small-hearted, has no loving kindness, gets upset easily, irritated easily, gets angry easily, gets jealous, all right? When they are overcome or when they have those emotions, they follow after those emotions. So the way they speak, the thoughts that they have in their mind, and the actions that they do will be based on those emotions. And in the beginning, when the first few slides that we read, because you create intention based on those emotions, you are creating bitter seeds for yourself. All right. So when your water is already small and salty, you just keep on creating further conditions for yourself where your water will always remain small. Maybe in the sun or whatever, you know. That is what it means by you are creating unwholesome karma. But if your body or water is large, and when bad things or unwholesome karma happens to you, and it's almost nothing, you deal with it easier than before. You may be irritated or you may be angry, but it happens only for a very short while. Then the unwholesome karma that you create is very, very little. Okay, so the more your body or water grows larger and larger, the less unwholesome karma you create from your past unwholesome karma. So your past unwholesome karma does not lead to new unwholesome karma. All right, so that's the second principle. All right, what's the third principle? Okay, third principle is a bit weird for people to understand. Okay, it is not being corrupted by wholesome karma. What does that mean? All right, okay. So say someone suddenly wins the lottery. Okay, you win something amazing, like maybe $10 million. And for the person who is undeveloped, the person who is small-hearted, has a lot of anger and hatred and don't care about people, selfish, when they win the lottery, the chances of them using the money in unwholesome ways is very high because that's already how they think, you know. So when they have wholesome karma that happens to them because of their unwholesome nature, they go on creating even worse unwholesome karma. All right. But if you are someone who has a big body of water and you're making the body of water bigger and bigger, and you win the lottery, maybe, okay, the first thing you do is maybe you donate money to help people. You know how to use the money for meritorious actions. So instead of creating unwholesome karma, you're not corrupted by your good fortune, but you create a lot of meritorious deeds. And that leads to even more wholesome karma for your future. Okay? Or say you get reborn in the heavens. For the small-hearted person, if they're reborn in the heavens, all they do is just exhaust their blessings. They don't know how to create merit or more blessings, and then they fall because they exhaust their blessings. But because you have the Dharma behind you, you know, you're born in the heaven, you know how to seek the Dharma, you know, there are so many things you can do. You can find when the Buddha comes to the heaven to speak the Dharma, you can go to the Tushita heaven to listen to Maitreya Bodhisattva, who's going to be the future Buddha. And you can even, depending on which heaven you're born into, your lifespan is long enough, you can find out when he's going to be reborn, and you make a vow and you follow Maitreya Bodhisattva back to earth and leave home with Maitreya Bodhisattva and birth and death. Okay, all right. So 3 principles. Okay, karma is fixed, but we can, by changing ourselves, we can change how the karma affects us, although karma is fixed. Okay. Number 2, if we practice, we are not when unwholesome karma happens to us, it doesn't mean we create new unwholesome karma. We stop the cycle of unwholesome karma. All right, that's principle number 2. Principle number 3 is as we create more wholesome karma, we are not corrupted by our wholesome karma. All right, is that clear? Did I make anyone confused? All right, if anyone's confused, just unmute your microphone. Okay, all right. So how do we make our body of water large? All right, how do we do that? Okay, Shufu says, and this is from Shufu's Talks on Dharma, Volume 5, Shufu says you should cultivate with a constant and steadfast resolve every day. Each day, strive to repent, correct your errors, and turn over a new leaf. As it said, a day of having corrected no faults is a day of having created no merit. We are cultivating to eliminate our bad habits and faults, cast out our default thoughts, and reveal our inherent clarity and wisdom. The wisdom and clarity are there, but they have been covered up by ignorance, so we cannot make good use of them. So by daily cultivation, we are adding water slowly but surely. Some people can do it really quickly because they have good roots. For others, it might be slow, but we are definitely growing the body of water. Shufu says, when we are obscured by ignorance, we tend to become petty and mean. If our wisdom comes forth, we will become more noble and go against the common flow. So we don't react like normal people. We can be like that strange person who gets caught in a thunderstorm but become very happy instead. Cultivation is not a one-day affair. Rather, we must cultivate in thought after thought, from morning to night, year after year, and month after month, without unchanging perseverance. Eventually, our prajna wisdom will mature. We should cultivate sincerely every day, just as a tree grows slowly but surely. As we practice, we should remain calm whether we encounter demonic obstacles, adverse situations, or even favorable situations. So that sentence is the 3 principles that I just talked about from that sutra. Okay, we should remain calm in case when our unwholesome karma fruition comes to fruition and affects us. If we can remain calm, then we are not creating new unwholesome karma. All right, and then when it comes to favorable situations, if we don't become crazy and enjoy ourselves too much, then we are not corrupted by our wholesome karma. All right. Shiva says, both in adversity and smooth situations, we should maintain our vigor. If we can recognize all things as proclaiming the wonderful Dharma, we will see ineffable wonders. By cultivating the transcendental Dharma right within worldly affairs, we can take the road home and discover our true identity. And Shufu says, at that point, nothing will confuse us. When states arise, we will be able to solve the problems easily. No situation will obstruct us. Eventually, our wisdom will come forth. It hasn't come forth yet because we aren't able to see through things and let go of them. Thus, we cannot be free and at ease. So knowing this, as we go through the following slides, I hope that you will get more meaning from them. Okay, so what I'm going to do next slide is I underline this line, if the mind is extinguished. It's the same verse I shared before. I need to use a restroom really quick. Can I ask a volunteer to read the next slide? Okay, so one of you just unmute your microphone and please read the next slide and I'll be back. Thank you.
I can read. The mind extinguished. The mind extinguished, not self. Then the world-honored one explained the instability of the self. Whatsoever is originated will be dissolved again. All worry about the self is vain. The self is like a mirage, and all the tribulations that touch it will pass away. They will vanish like a nightmare when the sleeper awakes. He who has awakened is freed from fear. He has become a Buddha. He knows the vanity of all his cares, his ambitions, and also of his pains.
Okay, thank you so much, Prashna. That was very helpful. Okay, so now we are trying to figure out what it means for the mind to be extinguished. All right, what does it mean for the mind to be extinguished? So, before we can find out what it means, let me go back one slide. Okay, so it is the middle of that verse. Says offenses arise from the mind, repentance is by the mind. If the mind is extinguished, offenses are forgotten. The mind forgotten, offenses wiped out, both are empty. This is called true repentance and reform. Okay, another word for offenses here means our karma. All right, it means the same thing. Different words, same principle, same meaning. Okay, so if the mind is extinguished, what does that mean? Does that mean we become like a block of wood, like, become stone, or we cease to exist? No, because this mind refers to the false mind that we are using. This, if you read the sutras, it sometimes talks about the 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas are our body and our mind. The 5 skandhas, like form, talks about form is our physical body, including our senses, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And then the other skandhas refer to the way our mind works and our consciousness works. When we see something, what happens? We think of something and then we start false thinking and we have discrimination and we take that to be the self. We can't help it actually because it's inbuilt us, because we know of nothing else. Our senses, our mind and our senses are how we interact with the world. And to say that that is not us is very hard because we have no other way of existing. We know of no other way of existing. So we are conditioned by ignorance. That's what it means when they say you're conditioned by ignorance. Now, how do we make sense of that? That now this mind that we're using is our false mind, it's not our true mind. Shufu says it's mistaking a thief for your son. Say at night you hear a sound, you're sleeping, you hear a sound and you think it's your son coming home, but it's actually someone coming to rob you of your valuables. Shufu says it's mistaking fish eyes for pearls. People who are ignorant look at fish eyes and think that they are valuable pearls. So what happens is because of ignorance, we don't have access to our Buddha nature and we take our false mind, our discriminating mind to be us. So the only way we can come to terms with trying to figure out how's that like is looking at ourselves when we dream. When we dream, everything seems real, right? We meet people, we talk to people, our emotions are real. When we have nightmares, we get really scared, stressed out. But when we wake up, then we realize that, it was just a dream. None of it was real. But when you're dreaming, you don't know that it's real, right? So from the Buddha's perspective, from the perspective of the Bodhisattvas, the Buddhas, and enlightened beings, they see us as we are dreaming right now. So they're trying their best to wake us up. But we don't even know that we are dreaming. Okay, so this mind that is on your screen here, it says the mind is extinguished. It refers to this false mind. It doesn't refer to the Buddha nature, it refers to this false mind. But what happens when you can extinguish this false mind? Then your Buddha, Shufu says, your original face reveals itself. Okay, and when that happens, all your karma is forgotten. They are wiped out. Why? Because they're conditioned. They're empty. They never existed in the first place. But in our confusion, we think they do. Just like in a dream. When we dream, we think everything we interact in our dream are real. Right? But it's only when we wake up then say, it's just our mind. It's just my mind, my dream consciousness generating all these things, the mirage but it's not. All right. Okay. Remember that thought. All right. Okay. So that's why in Buddhism A to Z, the Buddha talk about the instability of the self. All right. The Buddha says whoever is originated, which means all of us right now, will be dissolved again. We are born and we die. Okay. Our body is temporary. They say the self is like a mirage. They will vanish like a nightmare when the sleeper awakes. But because we are sleeping, we are caught in this dream or nightmare. Okay? All right. And the Buddha says it easily happens that a man, when taking a bath, steps upon a wet rope and imagines that it is a snake. This is an example Buddha is using. Horror will overcome him and he will shake from fear, anticipating in his mind all the agonies caused by the serpent's venomous bite. What a relief does this man experience when he sees that the rope is no snake. The Buddha explains the cause of his fright lies in his error, his ignorance, and his illusion. Maybe it's dark. Step on the snake, he sees something long steps on the rope, sees something long and immediately thinks it's a snake. Buddha says if the true nature of the rope is recognized, his peace of mind will come back to him, he will feel relief, he will be joyful and happy. This is a state of mind of one who has recognized that there is no self, that the cause of all his troubles, cares, and vanities is a mirage, a shadow, and dream. All right. So for our purposes, instead of using no self, we will use not self. Okay. Why? Because what we think is the self is actually not the self. The person, when you look in the mirror, and when you can see or hear or observe your thoughts running around in your head, that's not the self. Okay. So nowadays it's Shufu talking. Shufu says, what does it mean to get enlightened? It means you truly recognize what you're all about. You realize the principle of emptiness and you know that all things are false. This is truly knowing. You know the state called originally there was not a single thing. Where could thus a light? Shufu says it is also called understanding the mind and seeing the nature. So when you wake up, every single thing that was real in your dream or your nightmare, all the people you were talking to, all the emotions that you felt, all the decisions that you were trying to make in your dream, all those things that you were trying to do, whatever it was, whatever life you were leading. Then you realize, after you wake up, oh, there was not a single thing, right? Okay, all right. I hope everyone is staying with me here. Okay. Then Shufu says, it is said that when you understand the mind, that means this works both ways. One is the false mind being extinguished and seeing your original face or your Buddha nature. Either one. Nothing is difficult anymore. When you see the nature, all worries are gone. People who understand the mind don't worry about anything. As it is said, the spirits and immortals of old had no special tricks. They were simply happy as could be and they never worried. So if you grow your body of water to a certain extent, when it becomes so large, this is what happens. Anything that happens to you because your body of water is so large, it does not affect you at all. All your worries are gone. All right. So that's why Shufu says people who understand the mind don't worry about anything. It is a natural thing. You just don't worry at all. You just feel very happy and very relaxed. I wouldn't say happy. Yeah, you feel very joyful. It's very calm. It's very quiet. It's very, very peaceful. You feel the first thing that you will think of is, oh, this is how it's always been. I know it's funny to say that because it might be the first time you have experienced it, but it's just like waking up. You don't go crazy telling people, hey, I just woke up, I was dreaming and I just woke up. Same thing. When you get in touch with your Buddha nature and you see your original face, the thought just occurs, oh, this is how it's always been. I was confused before, But for now, I'm not confused. The trick is to make that state permanent. Okay, that's the hard part. All right. Okay. And the Buddha says, Shufu says, with the mistake of a self, one has attachments, there is selfishness, and then one is bound to have afflictions. This is when your water is not big enough, and any salt that gets added to it, you taste it immediately. But when one has no attachments and there is no self, okay, this is the false thinking mind, the mind extinguished, right? Says, then there is no selfishness and there are no afflictions. To be without any afflictions is to see the nature. Those who see the nature know no anxiety. You are stress-free, totally stress-free. They don't know the meaning of worry. So this is what happens when your water is large. And then from Buddhism A to Z, there's a references in his treatise on consciousness only. Tripitaka Master Xuanzang concludes his review of arguments refuting the reality of self in this way. So he's talking the self is like he's talking about the self right now, like how we talk about the self in a dream is not real. He's talking about our self right now that we think is real. He says the truth, okay, what's actually happening is that each sentient being is just, I'm going to add the word just, is just a continuous physical and mental series of what a mental series is. A process. It's just a series of processes like a computer program or conditioned phenomena, which by the force of mental defilements, in other words, our afflictions and impure acts, turns from one state of existence to another in cycles of transmigration. That means we keep on dying and getting reborn, dying and reborn, dying and reborn. According to Rebel Master Xuanzang, that's all that is. Okay, all right, let's move on. There's a sutra called the Karajakaya Sutta. This sutra will kind of explain about how offenses are gone. Okay, it says that noble disciple is rid of this desire, rid of ill will, unconfused, aware, and mindful. They meditate, spreading a heart full of loving kindness to one direction and to the second and to the third and to the fourth. It means that when you practice loving kindness, no one is not spared from your loving kindness. It means it goes around the world. In the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around, they spread a heart full of love to the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. This is speaking of the dhyanas. When your practice of loving kindness is so good that you enter the first dhyana, at least the first dhyana, okay? This is what this paragraph means. Then they understand, formerly my mind was limited and undeveloped. That's the person with a small body of water. Now it is limitless and well developed. It has become like the river Ganges. Whatever karma I've done does not remain or persist there. Okay? Alright, whatever karma that they have done does not remain or persist there. The effects are not felt. Alright? Then the Buddha asks, what do you think, bhikkhus, if a youth were to develop the liberation of mind by loving kindness from his childhood on, would he do a bad deed? That means a child is born naturally full of loving kindness, will never ever harm even an ant. So the answer is no. Okay? A boy like that can never do a bad deed. Then the Buddha says, could suffering affect him if he does no bad deed? And they say, no, Bhante, for on what account could suffering affect one who does no bad deed? Then the Buddha says, a woman or man should develop this liberation, that means freedom of mind, in other words, extinguishing the mind, all right, by loving kindness. So the practice of extinguishing the mind is through loving kindness, at least the foundation. It says a woman or a man cannot take this body with them when they go. Death, bhikkhus, is but a gap of a thought away. Mortals have mind as their core. What does this mean? A man or woman cannot take this body with them when they go. Shufu talks about not He said, when you coddle this body, no matter how much you coddle, it's going to betray you, it's going to leave you. That's what it means. All right, when we die, this body is just going to go back to the elements. And it says, mortals have mind as their core, meaning people who are ignorant or mortals who are not sages, we take the false mind to be our true mind. That's what it means. All right, so we have minds have their core. All right.
Ashir, I have
Yes,
a question for the first sentence for the last the slide before this. The first line where it says, if you to develop the liberation of mind by loving kindness from his childhood, does that mean if he practices loving kindness from his childhood, he will never harm anyone? Like, I understand the sentence, but I guess my question is, doesn't their karma take over even if they were raised by loving kindness, but their karma will take over after a certain age? So
Okay.
that will affect them, correct?
Yes, you are 100% correct, Saha. In this context, the Buddha is making a point. So usually, examples are not 100% foolproof. Meaning, if some people are too smart. I'm not suggesting you are, but some people who are very smart, they try to dissect. I would say too smart for their own good. They try to dissect example or a metaphor or a simile. So in this case, the Buddha is using an extreme case where a young child develops loving kindness to prove a point, right? Okay. And what you say is true. Children change. Actually, since young children are always, their karma is always taking over them. As they're learning new things, they are also, there are new things that they learn are being conditioned by their past karma as well. Those two things are happening at the same time. So it's true what you say. It doesn't mean like when a child turns 14 or 15, their karma magically takes over. Before that, their karma was not there yet. No, it's just that it becomes more obvious. Why? Because they start to think for themselves. They start to follow their minds more than the instructions of their parents. So the parents feel it more. Right? Okay. But there are circumstances, there are people who have so good roots that when they're born, they're like that. They really have good roots, and all their karma that is coming to fruition are all good, loving kindness seeds of karma. For example, the Buddha himself, when he was born, his whole life he never harmed anyone. In fact, when the Buddha was just, I think, 4 years old, he was sitting under a rose apple tree, and he was looking at the people farming the land, and the Buddha felt great loving kindness and compassion for all the various insects and living beings in the earth that were undergoing suffering, and he entered the first dhyana. 4 years old, right? And then you have Elder Master Shiyin Lao Hasang, who since young, he already knew when other children were doing all kinds of children things, he was making Buddha images out of mud and bowing to them. And his whole life, he led a very pure life. So you have amazing individuals like Shufu. Look at Shufu's life, right? So what you say is true, Saha. Their karma takes over. It's not that the karma comes in at a certain age. Like I said, their karma is always present. But if you develop your body of water very large, in your next life, the body of water will still be there, and it will have a huge influence on that person. Okay? All right. Thank you for that question. All right. Then the Buddha says, the noble disciple understands whatever bad deed I did here in the past with this deed-born body is all to be experienced here. It would not follow along. Okay, this does not mean for every one of us. This is talking about sages. All right, when you become a sage, like a first stream enterer, or you become an arhat. Arhat is not reborn again. So where is all his old karma going to look for him? There's nowhere for the old karma to look. the conditions for the old karma to arise will never happen ever again. So all offenses are empty, extinguished, right? For if you have first stream, if you're stream enterer or first stage arhat, then you have up to 7 births left. It's not fixed. You have maximum of 7 births left, depends on the individual's practice. And you get born in the heavens, you will never fall into the lower realms. And even if you are reborn as a human, you have a very good life. Your body of water is so large, like the examples I gave before. Whatever life throws at you, your suffering will be very, very, very minimal. Right? Okay. So the Buddha says, when the liberation of life of mind by loving kindness has been developed in this way, it leads to non-returning for a wise bhikkhu here who does not penetrate to a further liberation. It means that even if loving kindness is the only practice you can perfect, if you are successful at it, that's what happens to you. Okay, so we're coming to the end. Shifu in Talks of Dharma says, when deluded thoughts are still, in other words, the mind extinguished, and the exploitation of conditions comes to an end, that is true wealth and honor. In short, to not be greedy is to be wealthy and honored. People are greedy because they aren't content. They feel they don't have enough. This is when your water is not enough, so they feel they don't have enough. Shiva says, being without selfish desires is called a field of blessings. If the desires are totally cut off, that is the true field of blessings. You should pay special attention to this. So here, okay, that's the next slide. So Shiva says, if your mind is at peace, 100 difficulties will be dispelled. If your thoughts are settled, all things will be auspicious. So this is when your body water is so large, all right, that anything happens to you, you are like that funny person who gets caught in a thunderstorm and is having the time of his or her life, you know, thinking it's so wonderful. You actually have fresh water falling from the sky. It's like magic, you know, it's like a magic show for that person, you know. Yeah. So Shiva says, this is a famous saying, use it as a motto and you will receive limitless benefits throughout your whole life. So grow your body of water. Okay, let me see how many slides more, because it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes past. Let me see. Okay, I only have 3 slides more. Okay, so let's do the last 3 slides. Shiva says, what is affliction? This is the same talk, by the way. Shiva says, what is affliction? Having an afflicted body and an annoyed mind. Very small body of water means an annoyed mind. In this state, there is no self-mastery. No, you have no kung fu. Shiva says, what is worry? Distress and vexation and being low in spirits. Where does worry come from? Worry comes from false thinking. Where does false thinking come from? False thinking comes from one of the skandhas, one of the 5 clinging skandhas. All right? And that's the false mind. So that's why if you want to extinguish the false mind, then all worry will cease. What are sudden misfortunes? Accidents and unfortunate events. These things bind you and oppress you, like the lock of ignorance which locks you up, like the rope of affliction which ties you up. Imagine a dream that you cannot wake up from. They are also like a huge rock pinning you down and suffocating you so that you cannot breathe. So for someone who does not have a lot of water and everything that happens to them in life becomes a big deal and they're always angry and upset, if you look from a point of view of someone who is very calm and happy and peaceful, then you will understand how their self-created suffering, you know, is like a huge rock and it's very suffocating. It's very suffering to live a life like that. So Shifu ends with saying, the Buddha wanted all living beings to part with afflictions and attain peace and happiness. to escape from all oppression and gain liberation, and this is why he taught all living beings to bring forth the great Bodhi mind, and to learn and cultivate the Buddha's meritorious, virtuous conduct. In other words, grow your water. All right? The great Bodhi mind refers to having water like the river Ganges, like the biggest freshwater lake in the world, and even bigger than that. Shufu says, therefore, we living beings should listen to, accept, believe in, and practice the Buddha's teachings. It's for our own good. Our afflictions are limitless and boundless, but they are just like a mirage. So that's why it says offenses are empty, they can be wiped away. This human body is illusory. Don't always protect this thinking skin back as if it were a precious jewel, afraid to let it suffer and wanting to enjoy blessings. In spite of all this coddling, your body only gives you trouble. All right? So when Shufu says our afflictions are limitless and boundless, but they are just like a mirage, that's what our dreams are. Okay? All right, that's the last slide. I'm sorry for taking up so much time today. Does anyone have any questions, or is any of the things not clear? You don't have to really pay attention to, if you get the overall picture, that's important, to have an overall broad understanding of how we can practice ourselves. All right. Anyone has anything you want to bring up? Going once.
Dharma Master,
Yes.
do you have any feedback or comments to make for the new Chinese New Year Dragon Year? Has Sifu talked about these things before? I'm just curious.
You mean specific to this year or to a new beginning in general?
Specific to just the new beginning in general. I remember when I heard Sifu talking about the new year, he always says, just be happy and don't worry and recite Guan Yin's name.
Yeah, because that's one of the ways that you can grow your water. But it's not just blindly reciting Guan Yin's name. Is reciting is part of being mindful. And being mindful, if you, like, for example, if it comes to Guan Yin, if you look at the Universal Door chapter, it says, if you want to be safe, it says to invoke Guan Yin's strength. What is Guan Yin's strength? Loving kindness and compassion. Actually, Guan Yin's strength is great loving kindness and great compassion. For us, we cannot, be great yet, so we just do loving kindness and compassion. And it says that even if you are in prison, or things are supposed to befall us, then if you're in prison, the shackles will fall away. People try to harm you, the harm goes back to them. Some of it is just metaphor for saying that if you can invoke Guan Yin's strength, if we can use Guan Yin's strength, like loving kindness and compassion, in our everyday lives, behind every thought, our every intention, our every moment of speech and action, then we are growing our body of water big. And growing our body of water is not like physically is like a body of water. Sometimes, in certain circumstances, like with the right people, our body of water is very large. Like if Shufu is here, or like for me with my grandmother, or how I imagine my grandmother would be, my water for them would be immense. My grandmother can hit me, pull my hair, although I got no hair to pull, or, do things to me, and I wouldn't get upset, right? But for some other people, my body of water is very, very small, to the extent that just don't talk about a lump of salt, just a grain of salt, and it affects me already. Yeah. So as we practice, just be mindful. Whether it's the new year or not, it shouldn't make any difference. If every day we can invoke Guan Yin's strength, then as our water grows in all situations, then whatever happens to us will always be okay. But it's a practice. It takes some time. All right. Sometimes we are good at it. Sometimes it our practice might fail us, not because the practice is bad, but because we haven't done it well enough. But as long as we keep doing it, it will get better and better. All right. Then one day, New Year or no New Year, you don't even realize it. Why? Because every day is just the same happy day. All right. Okay. It's time to transfer merit. Okay. Let me get the slide. And if anyone else has any questions, you can bring it up. Okay. On next week, now there will be no lecture next week. Why? Because we are doing a Ta Meng Shan, a Grand Meng Shan. So there won't be any lecture next week. Okay, then we'll continue a week after. Okay, dedication of merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining us today. Let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, everyone, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Okay?
Thank you, Dharma Master.
Thank you.
Good night.